Welcome to Licking Non-Vanilla, a sex-positive hour of talk about kink, sexual mores, and writing dirty words. So grab a cup of cocoa, your favorite easy chair, and the lube as we go sailing into the dark, sweet waters of all things naughty. On Licking Non-Vanilla with your hosts Ralph Greco Jr. and M. Christian.
Hello, my little droogs. Welcome back to Licking Non-Vanilla. This is the show that you come to listen to dirty stuff, take your pants off, do what you need to do, and have some fun. I am Ralph Greco Jr., I believe, and across the aisle from me, figuratively as well as metaphorically, but not in my heart, is who is that? Who giggles every so often?
I don't know. I've forgotten. Who am I again? Who am I? I mean, got my driver's license out here a second. Oh, God. I mean, it's no help. No, this is Chris, otherwise known as M. Christian, from the green pastoral landscape that is Eugene, Oregon.
That's right. All the way out there. How's your weather been, Chris? The weather here is sticky, muggy, New Jersey muggy. How about you?
Well, not to one to, sort of lord myself over others, but, we've been actually pretty good around here. I mean, last year it was hot. This year it's luckily we dodged the bullets, so... Yeah. It's hasn't been that hot, but
good,
I don't do well with hot weather, so I'm quite happy with that.
Well, that's because you're smoking hot as it is, Chris. You can't handle that. Who needs any more of that? You'll implode. We're lucky today because we have a guest, and it's always nice when we have a guest on the show, especially when a guest is going to be as fun as I know this lady's going to be. Anyway, we're talking to Sarah Sloane. Or is it Sloane A? How do we say it, Sarah?
No, it's Sloane. It's I tell people it's just Sloane. Sorry.
Okay. I was going to say Sloane A.
No, don't class me up like that.
Okay. God forbid we class her up. Okay, and Sarah is a I'm going to read this right from her bio, sex, kink, and relationship educator and coach. She is also the Director of Operations and Communications for #Open, and we're going to get into #Open in a second. And we're very happy to have her on today. So welcome, Sarah. Thanks for coming.
Thank y'all both for having me.
We always thank our women when they come. Chris and I do what we can. We do what we can.
We help. It's always, all that kind of stuff is really, it's an individual thing, and of course, right. We can actually make someone, but we encourage.
We encourage all we can, because that's the kind of guys we are.
Exactly.
Now, for the past 2 decades, as it says here, Sarah has been helping others create sex, intimacy, and relationships that they desire through education and personal coaching, and. She got involved with #Open, and we'll tell you why in a second on what they're about. But Sarah, let's just a broad stroke. What do you think we're missing in sex these days, if anything?
I think what's really missing is the personal understanding of what it takes for each of us, outside of all of the labels, outside of all of the assumptions, to feel pleasure and to feel happy. There's an awful lot of do it like this and 5 great tips for getting your partner off, or here's the exact 14 knots you need to know for bondage. But, that's all really external. And what we know about sex is that it's an inside job. Mm-hmm. And so getting people to kind of, think literally outside of the box when it comes to their own sexuality. Yeah, literally. It's
outside of the box. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it's getting people to really think about what is this for me, and be able to advocate for that.
And who do you think's having the most problems these days?
Oh my gosh.
Is there any one gender, any one age group, anyone,
I think it's people who were raised to be male that are over 40.
Jesus, Chris, we're in trouble.
I know, exactly.
But here's the thing is we have done, and granted, there's still a long way to go for everybody, but we've been very focused over the past 30 years on empowering women to have better sex. And the younger generations have come up with more of an idea that everybody gets to decide what sex is for them and how to receive and give pleasure. But I think we have a group of people in our culture here in the United States that missed that conversation. And they missed getting the idea that, like, oh, hey, I could get pegged by my partner and it doesn't make me gay. Or maybe it's okay for me to want to just receive and not feel like my value as a lover is on how well I give. And so we've got a lot of that kind of toxic masculinity, the assumptions of what it means to be male, coupled with the fact that it's really only in the last 15 years that we've started talking about the right to pleasure for men. And so, I feel like that's a big piece of it. But over and above that, I think there are still folks that we don't even see as sexual beings. People with disabilities often get totally left out of the conversation. And people who are over 50. We've got some great writers who've done some... Oh, I'm over 50 now. No, but it's, the thing is that these are all times of our lives where, and I'm, as somebody who just turned 50 this year, hell yeah, I'm a firm believer that the wonderful thing that we bring when we get older is that we've kind of been there and done that.
Yeah, I think
and
that's true.
We know what's worth it and what's not worth it. And so this is actually a time of amazing exploration. We're decentering genitals when it comes to sex in such a way that it allows us, if we step into it, it allows us to totally rethink and reconfigure what pleasure is for us. And so it can be an amazing time if people take advantage of it.
Completely agree. I cannot tell you how much I agree with that. In fact, it's funny because it's like I know Ralphie and I are of a certain age, because I just turned 60, awesome. Fast approaching 61. So yes, I know. Get off my lawn. Kids' music these days is just my noise. And it's like, I had a whole box of ice up 4 and 5 flights of stairs. But it is kind of nice to see that some people are actually starting to address issues around senior sex and around, disabled or, people in that regard. In fact, one of the sites I write for is sexforeverybody.com, which specializes in, mobility issues, senior issues and so forth. And there's also sex toys that are actually starting to market for that. Like Hot Octopus has, a whole subdivision of toys that are designed for people with mobility issues or control issues as well as senior. But it is still like something that really needs to be much more addressed.
And I think that as those of us who are, boomers are still there. Those of us Gen Xers we're coming up on it. But we are seeing a lot more. Like when Hot Octopus put out the Pulse a few years back, I was managing a shop in town here called Pleasure Chest. I'm in Chicago. And it was amazing for us to have a toy that wasn't something that kind of tried to overcome the lack of an erection, but something that actually created pleasure regardless of erection. And that was such a game changer.
I love that band. Pleasure regardless of erection. I love that band.
In fact, I just did an article. I just wrote an article for Hot Octopus about BDSM for seniors, and I also just wrote one. I'm not bragging. I'm just sharing this information. And I just wrote one for Sex for Everybody on the Pulse Dual Lux. So I do think it's a really wonderful thing. I mean, it's like a really, really very cool toy.
Chris, what's pegging?
Pegging?
No, I'm just kidding. Because Sarah mentioned pegging like just a couple moments back. And I was like, "What's pegging?" And I'm not going to even tell you. But she, it's funny. When I asked you the question, Sarah, about what we're missing and what are misconceptions, that was the first thing that comes to mind, and certainly not something that Chris and I are ever been. I can't speak for Chris directly, but I know him well enough to say that's not something that's ever been a hang-up. But I know for a fact, and I'm fastly approaching 50, is so fast that I'm 58. But I think
whippersnapper.
But that's one of the first things that came to mind when you were talking about that, about the stigma behind anal for hetero men. And it was just, it came to mind immediately. And I don't even have that. I don't even worry about that. I'm not even thinking about it. It's just funny, the things that are ingrained in society or the way we think about things that maybe I'm not even worried about, but it was the first thing my mind went to. You know?
Yeah. it's still, as somebody who's been teaching classes about anal play and prostate play for a number of years, I still do have inevitably people who come up and they say like, hey, something is wrong with this. I don't know. And what they're describing is actually normal behavior. I had one guy come up to me after a class and he's like, it doesn't, like when I'm getting fucked, I really love it, but my dick isn't hard. So what's going on? And I was just like, why do you think your dick needs to be hard in order for you to experience pleasure? And he said, well, because that's what I see in porn. And I'm like, oh, honey, it's like,
don't be following that.
That's like judging how you ice skate with like Olympic skaters.
Yeah,
it's like,
I've always
they're there to make it look good.
No kidding.
So it is, I think there's a lot of misconceptions that folks have about what sex is supposed to look like. And like I said, that's what gets us hung up is we're like, oh, okay, well, so in order to have a good sex life, I need to do this, or I need to look like this, or I need to, it needs to look like this. There has to be a tab A to put into a slot B.
Yeah.
And it's getting past all of that BS and kind of going like, what actually makes me feel good? What actually gives me pleasure? What ways do my partner and I, or my partners and I, connect that makes us feel great?
Yeah, I think it's true too, because I mean, in the case of like Chris and I, we are perfect physical specimens, and all the sex we have is perfect. So it's hard for us to get past that and see that other than just regular people don't fuck like porn stars like we do. But having said that, I do agree. I think that we get these misconceptions about kink all the time when people they go to try something and they're like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And in fact, I'm not even that interested in this now because I tried it and I don't like it. And Chris and I say this all the time. We're like, well, that's fine too. What's in your head doesn't necessarily mean it's going to relate to what's going to happen in your bedroom.
Exactly. And you're right. Porn is like, one of those things. I think it has a power to like, show people other forms of sexuality. We can try it out, but also there's so many. It's fiction. It's not reality. And that's unfortunately so many people still seem to think that they measure their sex by what they see in porn without knowing it's like this is not a single cut. There's, a lot of things going on in the background. These are also people who are professional, they use medication, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's done for show. I mean, yes, certain people, really enjoy it, but it is designed for entertainment. And, there's nothing wrong with what you do as long as it's consensual and as long as you're satisfied, then go for it.
Yeah,
I went to a sexpo years ago, and Evan Stone, who's a very prolific performer, he was doing a little lecture kind of workshop thing that they do at these events. And he was like, okay, how many of you guys want to be porn stars? And like legitimately every guy raised his hand, and he's like, okay, here's what you got to learn. And he's like, you got to learn how to fuck around corners because it doesn't matter whether you're enjoying it. There has to be the right view for the camera. And he actually said, like, you have to kind of give up orgasms because, like, if you're going to have a limited number of them, they have to be on screen because that's how you're getting paid. And it was really interesting watching the faces of these people who kind of had this idea of like, oh, porn stars get all the action, kind of like hearing about how much work and how much you literally have to work, to make sure that you are right on just for that and the rest of your life is kind of off to the sides.
Yeah, that's very
it was amazing to watch that. And he does it with such a good humor that it, like he was able, I think, to reach some people and help them understand that what you're seeing on screen is what professionals do, but don't conflate it with your own pleasure.
Absolutely. No, I think that's true. Now, before we go any further, let me just tell you where you are if you just happen to... Well, I don't think you're just going to happen to tap in. You're going to download these episodes. But anyway, this is Licking Non-Vanilla with Ralph Greco Jr. and M. Christian. And to his friends, his name is Chris, so you have to call him M. Christian. And we are talking today with Sarah Sloane. No, it's Sarah Sloane. But I'm going to say Sloane because it sounds so cool.
Lord.
Now, the way I met Sarah was through hashtag Open, and we're going to get into that now. She works for them. And what I did was, a couple months back, I think, Chris, I interviewed one of their main people there about a specific problem they were having, and we'll get into that too. and that was on Short and Sweet. That's the Sex Files that I write on Short and Sweet. And anyway, and then Sarah, being the great publicist that she is, she doubled back and wanted to see if I want to do something further, which is what it's all about, keeping in touch with people, I think, and not burning a bridge, right, and all that kind of good stuff that we all do and we all try to do. Anyway, so let's get a little bit into hashtag app open, if you don't mind, Sarah. Let's talk about what that is first.
So hashtag open is a dating and community app for people. I'd like to say that it's for people who want to kind of date outside of the boxes. We have over 60 options for gender orientation and relationship style. So people can claim all of their identities in one place. We have a really strong set of community guidelines that focused on respect, consent, and curiosity. And we actually have found that we have developed amazing traction with folks who are interested specifically in ethical non-monogamy and kink. Those two groups of people, and in fact the overlap of those groups of people, makes up a huge percentage of our membership. We're unofficially, we're over 60,000 folks worldwide, primarily here in the U.S. and Canada.
That's amazing.
And we have a really amazing structure where it also reinforces consent through things like we have a double opt-in for messaging. So for folks like me who generally, we say we're female when we get into an app, and normally women get barraged by lots of, hey, baby, and a penis, which is, that's fine if that's what you're looking for. But for most of us, we'd like to actually make real connections. We offer a double opt-in system. So like, I know, Chris, you mentioned you just downloaded us.
Yes.
Maybe I'm going to change my location to where you're at, and I might swipe right. And if you swipe right, we get a notification that says like, hey, y'all have matched, have at it. And then we can chat in the safety of the app before we decide whether we're going to get to meet each other. But having that double opt-in really does help make it a safer place for people. And we do a little bit of an unusual setup for searches. You can actually use hashtags to search for what you're looking for. So if you went in and you say hashtag polyamory, you could actually see in your search results everybody else who's got that as an interest. So yeah, I really like the fluid nature of it. Yeah. And I think as somebody who's not I didn't grow up during the app times. Apps are to me. I'm still that person who's like, how do I do this? I have to like Google, how do I do a screenshot on my phone sometimes?
Oh, me too.
Tell me about it.
But I think navigating this app actually is a lot easier than some of the more kind of heavy duty, the old dating platforms like on the websites. So I actually started working with them kind of accidentally. My friend Tristan Taramino was doing some consulting work for them last year and asked me if I would be willing to host a meet and greet here in Chicago on their behalf because the person they'd originally planned couldn't make it. And I said, I've been around for like 20 years doing sex positive education, and I'm really kind of picky. And to me, like, dating app is always like, oh, I don't know about this. And I dug in a little bit and I read more about them, and I talked to some of the folks that are on the core team, and their ethics were pretty solid. And so I was just like, okay, let's give this a shot. Did a little work for them last year, and then this year I kind of moved into more of a full-time role with them. So, it's the old hair club for men joke is like, I'm not just, but I am, I'm in the app both as an individual and I also work for the company.
Chris, what do you think? You signed up for them. Tell me what
I would say. It's like, I have to say the experience was very pleasant. I mean, I like the fact that it didn't have that kind of like forced high-tech feel a lot of, dating apps have sometimes, where you feel like, okay, you spent so much money on making the app look snazzy, but then when it gets down to what actually it's doing, it doesn't do it. So, and I really love the inclusivity. I love the hashtag function, which I think is really, really cool. I just dabbled into it, but I have to say my first impressions are extremely positive. And I really like that. I also like the fact that, so many of them are saying things like, yes, sign up for the 60,000 singles in your area. And by the way, you can't look at them until you pay some ridiculous amount.
No kidding.
And that gets so frustrating. It's like, oh, we found your perfect match. It's your soulmate. You'll spend the rest of your life together unless you spend, $25 a month. And it's just like, oh, give me a break. It's just like, it's that bait and switch saying that kind of sours a lot of people on dating apps. And I have to say that, yours, admirably doesn't do that. And I really, once again, I love the fact that it feels like it was created by and for, kink, gender fluid, people. And I think that's really totally admirable.
Yeah. We also, one of our co-founders, Amanda Wilson, actually has a background in game theory. And so one of the things that, and we have a lot of women and folks of multiple genders, not just men, who are on the team that influences how everything is designed. But the cool thing that I've learned about game theory with this is that if everybody is coming to the table being able to identify what it is that they're actually looking for, then everybody is more likely to get the kinds of connections that they want. And so Amanda's priority with creating this app was to create a space where people could authentically be who they are, because we know that that's what makes the connections that are worth having.
Makes sense, right? Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I spoke to David way back, and initially how we got in touch was that Hashtag Open was having a little more than a little brouhaha with Facebook.
Yes.
Let's just talk a little bit about what that was all about and where that is now.
Okay.
If anywhere.
Yeah, it's actually in exactly the same spot.
Okay.
So an interesting thing that we have learned is that if you specifically say that you are an app that allows couples to look together for a potential partner, that violates community standards.
What?
For
At Facebook you're okay, right, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
However, that rolls over to other apps as well. We've been unsuccessful in doing what most apps are able to do in order to promote themselves, which is to advertise. But because we are a dating app, one of the features that we have is we actually have a really transparent way for couples to look for other partners, which is that you can have a single profile and a shared couples profile, so that there's none of this, like if the two of you were partners and Chris was having to read everything, it would, there's a little bit of catfishy kind of shady stuff that can come with that. We make it really transparent so that, I know if I'm talking to this couple, Ralph and Chris, online, that I'm actually talking to Ralph and Chris. I'm not just talking to Chris, who's putting, So no, when we applied to advertise with Facebook, they basically said, nope, we're not going to take your money. We find that you are against our community standards. And the best that we can come up with is that, they said that we're kind of in the same category as websites that promote infidelity and mail order brides. Yeah. And which I found really amazing, because literally the day that we had this conversation, OkCupid had advertised on there about find somebody tonight. And so I'm like, well, clearly it's okay for you to be very, kind of sex focused, as long as you're doing it in a way that doesn't ruffle other people's feathers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just strange to me. And I'm not even talking about Facebook. I'm just talking in general. I would think if you're going to allow, and it's a very fine line between what you just said, ruffling. Whose feathers are you ruffling, and how specifically are you ruffling them?
Right.
Which is
right.
strange.
And we know that there's a huge number of people who engage in ethical non-monogamy. A huge number. It's one of the most prevalent sexual fantasies for folks in America. I read a study yesterday that said that over 20% of people will do some sort of consensual non-monogamy at some point in their lives.
Okay.
So when we're talking about 20% of people do this at some point, how do you have a community standard that basically minimizes the experiences and the desires of those 20% of people. It just doesn't make sense. And so there's very clearly, a morality police kind of idea that many websites and a lot of online platforms have about what kind of sex is okay and what kind of relationships are okay.
I say this all the time about business, and I always hear myself saying this, and I'm thinking I'm either really, really stupid, which is definitely possible, or I'm not getting something. But oftentimes I see businesses acting in a way, and it's fine to have a business and say we will allow this and not allow this. I mean, it's your private business; you do whatever you want. But there's that. Well, this is okay because I deem it's okay because it makes me a lot of money, as opposed to this. And the other question of sometimes you're what's the term? You're cutting off your penis to spite your crotch. I don't know what the term is, but you're doing something that's just so counter to you making good business decisions because you have a wild hair up your ass about something. And I don't know why you can't. And this is where I sometimes feel that maybe I'm just being really, I just don't get it. But why you can't just back up the way your religion or your political view or whatever it is, and just back it up and say, look, I just want to grab some cash here. Let's just do that. Like just a pure business standpoint. So like, why not take this new company that's coming to me, even if I don't believe in what they're doing and stuff? Who cares? I can make money just from a pure money standpoint. And why would I even let anything else get in the way? Like that's bad business practices. And evidently, the people who run Facebook have made gazillions of dollars. So they're definitely interested in making money. So did their morality get in the way here, or did something else happen in this instance? I mean,
what we kept hearing was community standards.
Yeah.
That,
which is
and,
a nebulous term, which means dick all.
Exactly. It means bullshit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We do have, though, bigger issues around the ways that we can talk about sex online. We have FOSTA SESTA, which has had a truly chilling effect on the ability of anybody in the adult industry to be able to communicate online about what they do. The number of sex educators that I know that have been bounced off of Facebook, not because they are putting up, inappropriate, and I'm air quoting with my hands like right now, inappropriate content, but because somebody said, this offends me.
Yep.
And so there is this very chilling effect that laws like FOSTA SESTA or they're trying to push through this Earn It Act, which is even worse because it means that there's going to be like a decency board. Essentially, we're going to go, we're going to call back to 70 years ago and have that level of censorship. So I think that in some cases, the bigger that the platform is, the less that they're willing to rock the boat too much. But of course, like we're, here in the United States, we are a very sex terrified country.
I think that's true.
Owning our own sexuality,
Absolutely.
being able to ask for what we want. And so like when we talk about, people who want to come in and feel like they're doing something good for the community, sex is one of the first places that they'll attack.
Yep. Can't agree more. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the major problems in this country, among so many laundry list of bad things in this country, is we're just so sex phobic. We're sex, we're just consider it like anyone screams and covers their children's ears, and it's just hysterical. And that's the problem. It's like, so many of these industries don't know how to deal with it, because if they come out, they'll understand it anyway. I mean, that's the thing. It's like their sexual ignorance is radical, because they look at something and they say all they can do is group it with, like you said, infidelity, because they simply don't understand it. And a lot of it, I'm not trying to justify it, but a lot of it I feel is that there isn't, anyone at the head doing this. It's all a bunch of mid-level, people who don't know what to do. So their first reaction is to ban something, because they don't understand it and they don't want to stick their neck out and take a risk. So their automatic reaction is just, block it, and which is so infuriating because they're such hypocrites, because they'll allow political misdirection and outright lies. They'll put up false and damaging and potentially lethal health products up, but the instant you mention dating, sex, or anything else, they just completely freak out. And it's so infuriating. And again, it just feels like there's no one in control. If someone had actually said, here's our policy and here's how it breaks down and here's how it works, but it's like Amazon around erotica. They don't know. So they simply have they put out these ridiculous pronouncements about what can go up and what can't, and with nothing to back it up. And then it disappears after a couple of months and comes back again.
Yeah. Well, and many of these platforms are using artificial intelligence, or they're looking for keywords, they're looking for key terms. One of the things that we know is from our experience with, because sometimes we go and we try setting up accounts with other dating apps to see what happens. It's like, it's reconnaissance basically. But, we've watched pictures get taken down on there because they came close to showing a groin. There's not a clear understanding of what's going to cross the line. And everything is based on either somebody who's butthurt reporting it, or, then having it go through an automated system, which kind of looks at the raw data and says yes or no to it.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I mean, cut you off. I was just thinking of Tumblr.
No, that's fine.
I was thinking of what happened to Tumblr. What the standard was for what they could show, what they could say, and then it goes by the wayside.
Yeah. Yeah, and we try to, at #Open, we try to be very, very clear about what is and what is not. The other thing is that Miley, who is our manager of product, and I and our social media manager are actually the people who are double checking everything. So when somebody says hey, this person is violating something, or hey, I think this person might be a scammer, you get actual human beings who are looking at it. And we're weighing all of the evidence, and we will reach out to people and say, hey, there's a little thing with your profile, and we just wanted to let you know how this is coming across. Or, hey, your behavior might not be so fantastic. Would you mind? We give people the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. But we definitely know that when we try to automate these decisions too much, it ends up silencing a lot of voices that need to be heard.
Well, Chris was talking about before, just a couple seconds ago, about the standard and the censorship and all this stuff and stuff. And there's also the other side of the coin is the quick to judgment and the quick to cancel, which doesn't leave a lot of gray area, and because somebody makes some sort of pronouncement on Twitter, it's immediately seen as gospel or the way things are and the truth. And there's no truth out there that way. And that quick to, you can't even question something, because the minute you question something, you're labeled as well. And all that stuff just comes at you from all different angles, and you're in the middle just trying to just figure your own sexuality out, or maybe look for where I can go get a spanking, something simple as that. Yeah. And you have all these other things that are coming at you, which put a lot of shame on you and a lot of blame on you, and all. And then the people who are slightly marginalized and maybe have never experienced the things they want to experience, they feel, well, I'm not going to reach out now. Forget it. The minute I do this, I get attacked from whatever quarter. I need a safe place. And you know what? Yeah. So much of this crap is happening around me so often, I don't think I'm going to put myself out there at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that, obviously my calling for the last 20 years has been around education, to get people information that's actually meaningful to them. Earlier we were talking about the fact that, men of a certain age are kind of disadvantaged because they didn't get a chance to grow up in a world where we challenge their assumptions about what mainstream culture was telling them that sex was supposed to be. Our teenagers aren't exactly doing any better right now.
It's funny, when you said that way back when in this conversation, I thought the same thing, and I didn't want to say it because I was going to say it later, but I didn't want to say it then because I feel the same way. I don't think I see what's going on with my friends' kids, and I'm thinking they're spinning their wheels as much as anybody.
they have a lot of information, but they don't necessarily get information that they know is solid.
Yeah.
I get to, every year I get to lecture to incoming freshmen, usually at DePaul University here in Chicago. And I get to talk to them about alternative sexuality and alternative relationships. And so I spend about an hour and a half talking with them about kink and polyamory and ethical non-monogamy. And we break down some stereotypes. Every year they get smarter. I remember probably 8 years ago when I first did it, I said, so how many of you have ever heard about polyamory? What do you know about it? And everybody would say, oh, sister wives. And like, I think last year or the year before when we were having questions, I had somebody who said, do you think that the BDSM community is more welcoming of people who are gender nonconforming? And I was just like, holy shit, where did that come out of?
Right.
That's not even a question I would have, I don't know that I would have been able to answer that question into my 40s, much less talk about it when I'm 18.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of great information out there, but it's not easily accessible because we don't have ways to get that information out that are really solid. So people find it wherever they can, which often defaults into like, Pornhub, or not that there's anything against porn, but if that's the only representation that teenagers have about sex and they have an easy time getting it, then we're not actually preparing them with all of the information they need in order to think about what sex could be for them personally.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing. It's like, even the best efforts of some really admirable people, including yourself and many other organizations, are putting, accurate and supportive and inclusive sex education out there. The only problem is it's one drop in an ocean of this, porn fantasy world. And, and it also requires people to look for it, which is the problem. Because a lot of people feel guilty even about looking up information about sex if they're curious. So they simply let it sort of like wash over them. And that's when all this ignorance and intolerance, I think, comes with it. It's usually kind of basically like a digital version of like the schoolyard gossip. Yeah. And what you're talking about, I think also, Ralphie, about like, how difficult it is. I think also because there is also that factor of, sex and, sexual supportive things will get more reported than anything else. So there's a lot of doxing going on. There's a lot of Puritans, and that's a wrong term, just bigots, who are just looking for any opportunity to try and either dox sex workers or report sex positive posts. And, so it ends up a numbers game. Again, a lot of this is being done by AI. So if you have an ad that goes up or a person's post, it gets attention of the wrong crowd. They report it like crazy. The AI says, there must be something wrong. Let's ban it, until a human being can look at it, which can take weeks or months. And even then, they look at the numbers. Oh, my God, this thing got 20,000 reports or 200 reports or whatever it takes. They're just going to block it because it's easier than trying to, do the right thing. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Now, let's just stop for a second. Let me know we're at the 15-minute or so mark. We are having a really great conversation today. We are. And at Licking Non-Vanilla, that's where you are with Sarah, sweet little Sarah. And Sarah's actually really smart for a girl, which is really something. Now, Sarah, let me tell you a story about that little remark. So I'm on a sex business website, which will go nameless, XBiz, and I happen to I'm following a thread. Now I never jump into a thread because they're just people they got nothing else to do with their time. So anyway, I made a remark. I said the remark like something, and I don't remember what it was. It was something political. And I'm apolitical, so I like to just push buttons and have fun with it. I don't know anything. And in that thread, I said, well, obviously the trouble started when we gave women the right to vote. Now, obviously, that's kind of supposed to be a satirical comment, and I got smacked.
Yeah, because you can't have
sense
satire.
Of humor.
So here's the thing is like somebody that knows you might know like, oh, that's just Ralph. But there is no, somebody said there is no satire font that you can type in.
Right. But the only thing about that, and you're right about that because they don't know me. But here's the second part of that equation. So then I'm going to get banned because they said I'm going to get banned. And I came back with, so we can't, even if you had that opinion, which I don't have that opinion, but you're allowed to have that opinion. Of course you are. You're allowed to have any opinion you want to have. Doesn't mean we have to like it. Doesn't mean we have to even be your friend after you have that opinion. But I said, I can't then have an opinion here that's different than everybody else's? And then I said, even though this is not my opinion, after I said that later. And they said, okay, thank you for walking it back. I said, no, I'm not walking back anything. All I'm walking back is the fact that you're saying to me on a sex business site full of liberal people, really wonderful minds, big brains, they can't even come to the conclusion that even if you say something completely abhorrent, you're not allowed to say it. So what the fuck? That made me crazy, And that's what I was saying before about the cancel culture. We're so quick to say don't say that. You can't even say that. You can't even think that. And if you think that, I don't want to deal with you. What way is that to have a discourse?
And I tell people that if you want to have discourse, online's not the place to do it.
Well, there you go. And you're absolutely right. And I should have known better. Absolutely right.
Also, there's so much blatant hypocrisy because I routinely will go through social media and I'll report hate speech. They don't do anything about it. It's like, someone will make a disparaged comment about queer individuals, gender fluidity, anything for that matter. And it's clearly hate speech. And I'll report it and nothing. They say, it didn't violate our community standards. It's like, what the crap is that? Meanwhile, it's like, other people, are getting themselves blocked or banned once again, because they're talking about sex or they're talking about progressive politics. And it's just that infuriating, inability for these social media platforms to get their freaking act together. It's like it should be but again, it's like we're asking them to do something that they don't want to do, because once again, it takes money, it takes time, it takes focus. So we end up with nightmares like Facebook that is, wrecking people's lives because of the disinformation they're allowing to go out there. And they don't care because as long as the money comes in, they have no obligation. So the same thing with all these things. I mean, we're lucky they do as much as they do badly because, frankly, it's kind of a PR move.
I mean, it's the other piece is that they literally are so big now that they're mining data and that's actually the product. The product is not even the app; it's the data.
You're right about that. Absolutely.
I have personally gone through a lot of love hates with my Facebook. Because I don't necessarily feel like I have the capacity to manage myself as a person and myself as a business. And so I just kind of lump it all into one. And I've gone back and forth on how I feel about that because on the one hand, I like being able to see my, the person that I ran into at a workshop last year and we had a great 10-minute conversation afterwards. I love being able to see pictures of their dog. I just love that. That's what I go on there for. On the other hand, there's so much that is just, I don't necessarily want it on my front porch. And so there's this tension about how do we use social media, how do we use internet, how do we use dating apps, how do we navigate these things with a sense of fair play and with a sense of community guidelines. And the reality is with Facebook, there's no community guidelines. And
there isn't.
With the website you were talking about having this conversation, there's no community guidelines. And so when we're looking for information, when we're going to download an app, I really do feel really strongly, look at the company that you're going to be joining with. Take this attitude that you're a consumer. If you were buying a $50,000 car, you would read the details. You would look at how does the warranty, but because apps are free or very inexpensive, people don't stop to think about hey, is this actually a company that has my best interest at heart?
Right. Exactly. Does it dovetail with what I believe and what I feel is right? Absolutely. And if it doesn't, and it does, you choose. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And one of the biggest headaches is the fact, for people who are in the biz of getting their name out there, I mean, it could be sex educators, it could be writers, anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're really kind of over a barrel because there really isn't any other options. I mean, it used to be. Yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about the good old days here. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it used to be that was like there was like websites and that was about it. And now because of social media, if you're not on social media, your opportunities and publicity and you know range is severely limited, which means that you're really at the mercy, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, they can block you or ban you for no good reason, and so you have to kind of play this waiting game of is this going to cause trouble, or I'm just waiting for some right-wing loony to sort of put me in their crosshairs and basically destroy any kind of social media presence I have. It's really very, very stressful.
Or left-wing loony. You know what I'm saying? Like the loonies are on each side. They're everywhere. They're clowns to the left of me, clowns to the right. Everywhere. I don't care who they are. I don't care what their political aspirations. There's loonies everywhere. I
think we're talking also about like we have culturally for years now been at a time where everybody is experiencing a lot of fear and a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
And it's not like we show up online any different than we show up in the rest of our life, So I'm kind of very aware of the fact that a lot of times when people react to something online, it's because they don't have context and they don't have the safe space to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And so, part of what we do is, or part of what I do is I make sure that people know exactly what they're signing up for. Like when I teach a class, it's like, hey, this is what we're going to do. I make it real clear that this is an opt-in. I ask for people to intentionally opt into that space. I ask them to agree to the community guidelines. We have been doing since I think we're at 26 or 27 of them now. We've been doing a #OpenEd educational series. And so every week, once or twice a week, we bring on an educator who's really well known in the sex positive community, or we bring on a porn star, or we bring on somebody who has something to say about sex and relationships. And we are very careful about where we host that. We know that at any point, we have it like go ahead and feed over to Facebook, but we know Facebook is entirely likely to take it down, so we don't house anything there. We try to keep as much as possible on our own servers because we know that at some point, somebody may decide like, oh, those #open people, let's not have any of their stuff here, and we don't want to lose our ability to serve our community.
So now, in speaking of that, let's talk about where everybody can find all this great stuff.
Yes. You can find us on the web at #open, and it's spelled out HASHTAG open.com. You can also find our app on the Android and on the iPhone store or Apple store. We have, if you go to our website, you can find all of that. You can also find links to our Twitter and our Facebook. And because, again, social media, got to be on social media. Our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are all, oddly enough, #open, because when you've got a name, you use it. You can also actually find a link to our YouTube channel, and we have all of those episodes of our #open eds right there, and they're available for everybody. We don't care whether you have, they're not just for our members. We do some members-only stuff that's kind of fun. Tonight we're having a lap dance workshop via Zoom.
That's great. That's great.
So, well, it's like sometimes education can be sexy, and we want to do that.
No kidding. Well, it is what Chris does it.
Well, I highly recommend the channel too. I mean, both the app as well as that, because it's so fun to see some of my friends up there, like Tristan and Laura Antonu and so forth. So, I was cruising. I was going I wanted to wave from the audience, saying, "Hey, Laura," "Hey, Tristan, how you doing?" So it's like it's fun to be able to see some of my buddies up there.
Well, Chris, that was the first time I came across your name. Was you wrote a chapter, or you wrote a story for her book, The Reunion. And that was the first piece of yours that I read.
Aw, thank you.
So when Ralph was like, "Oh, here's my co-host," I was like, "Oh, I know that name."
Yeah.
There's like, "Oh, I know that name," and it's But Laura is one of those people in my world that is just like anything Laura puts out there, I will eagerly consume. She's just amazing.
Absolutely. And let's tell everybody where they can find you specifically, Sarah.
I am, well, you can find me in the app. Sorry. I am at sarahsloane.net, and you would put that E that y'all were joking about earlier.
Yeah, the E's got to go in there. So it's Sarah Sloane, but it's pronounced Sarah Sloane. Right, okay.
Yeah, and it's fun because if there is also a porn star named Sarah Vandella who for about a year changed her name to Sarah Sloane without an E, and so I got a lot of joy out of thinking of people that were like looking for her porn and found my educational stuff and kind of had like a little boner killer. So
yeah, I am the boner killer. Yeah.
I mean, there are people that would say that about me, and with a gleam in their eye, with a gleam in their eye.
Oh, yeah, wait a minute. Let me give me a second to go, oh, yeah, maybe that does work for me. Wait a minute.
Yeah, but I'm at sarahsloane.net. I'm also on the social medias with my full name. It's a lot easier to find me that way. I always welcome conversation like this because there's so much out there that is just, if we just open up and have these conversations and talk about our realities and create space to have create a community guideline where we say, hey, like for right now, we're just going to ask all the questions and we're not going to worry so much about like what's okay and what's not okay. And we get those answers. It empowers all of us to move forward.
Absolutely. And well, you've given very good conversation, I must say. And
I like to give good talk.
And it was really...
Absolutely delightful.
Time.
Absolutely. We got you back on again for sure. This has been absolutely delightful.
I would love that, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. Well, so we're gonna when we get the episode up, when I think this will be episode number 15. When we get it up, Sarah, we'll share it with you, and you can share it with all your good people. And I'll do my usual blog and get all this stuff down. So when pictures up and all that kind of stuff,
Awesome. And I would love to come back anytime and let me know if there's anything I can do to support y'all.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you,
yes,
Sarah.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you as always.
Oh, always wonderful. Always fantastic.
Yeah, we are, aren't we? And this has been Licking Non-Vanilla with Ralph Greco Jr. and
Chris, otherwise known as M. Christian.
Right. And we'll see you next time, my little droogs. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Sarah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And visit us on the web at www.lickingnonvanilla.com.